Part 2. Imagine walking into a burning building, and everyone laughs and tells you the fire's all in your head. When no one believes you, are you going to stay to burn up with them? Every passenger in that crowd waiting to embark on the luxury cruise was already dead. They just didn't know it yet. I stared through the windows of the terminal at the magnificent sea star, at the broken glass and spatters of blood that only I could see, and then I fled. Without warning, a single soul. What would have been the point? My name is Cassandra. I see death 6 days before it happens, and can feel it if I shake a cold hand. But no matter what I do, I can never, ever prevent it. My flight took me as far as the escalators before a flash of purple brought me screeching to a halt. 𝐒𝐇𝐀𝐑𝐄? No, it wasn't the purple-haired musician who'd given me with cruise gift card. But suddenly I remembered how I'd been looking forward to hearing her performance aboard this very vessel. Oh God. It was one thing to turn my back on doomed strangers. Terrible as it sounds, it's a bit like reading about a catastrophe in the news. Quite another thing to abandon somebody I knew. Could I really leave her to become one of the bodies putrefying in the belly of the sea star? Every time I ordered a drink at my favorite bar, I'd remember I hadn't even tried to save her. Fuck, I cried, fumbling for my phone. Oh, fuck me sideways. How much time? 90 minutes. 90 minutes to get on board, find the musician, and... What? Convince her to disembark? How? And yet my feet were already turning toward the gangplank, because as it turns out, I would rather plunge headlong into a ship full of the rotting dead than face an empty piano bench and the guilt that no amount of alcohol would ever drown. But to have any chance at persuading Lily, I'd need to know how the passengers died. This meant that in addition to finding a purple-haired needle in a Titanic-sized haystack, a horrifying task loomed ahead of me. I was going to have to do something I had not done in a very long time, plunge directly into my vision, walk into its very maw and face, whatever gruesome horrors lurked at the source of that nauseating odor. I was going to have to find the boaties and whatever killed them. Boarding, the stench was so overpowering after crossing the gangplank that I dropped to my knees and dry heaved. The flow of passengers moved around me past the concierge desk. I must have looked exceptionally sick because a pretty girl in a suit skirt approached, asking if I needed assistance. She reached out a hand to help me up, cold. I staggered away from her and inside. Then, because I felt I might throw up, quickly found my way out to the promenade deck and the blessed breeze. Lifeboats hung overhead. Beyond the rail, the sea sparkled in the afternoon sun. Cushioned loungers lined the deck. None were in use, presumably because the pool, patio, spa, and other amenities on the upper decks had much more attractive areas for lounging. I leaned against the rail and gulped the air, listening to the waves splash against the side of the boat, noting blood spatters further down, but nothing signifying the cause of the blood. Just vague signs of violence. After circling the entire promenade deck and spotting only the occasional bloody spatters, I gritted my teeth, pulled my shirt collar up over my nose, and plunged into the nearest door. The Sea Star's interior had the atmosphere of a luxury hotel. People milled about the restaurant and shopping area, buzzing with excitement, talking about cabaret shows and fine dining, while perky crew members answered questions, all perfectly oblivious to the putrid, sweet, rotting stench. I'd most likely find 𝐒𝐇𝐀𝐑𝐄 at the piano lounge, but since I didn't yet have any plausible explanation for what had happened to the passengers. I continued wandering, entering a bustling cafe overlooking the ship's grand staircase. Stepping over an enormous bloodstain on the carpet, I passed the counter, nauseated by the fancy pastries behind their glass cases, peering among the tables, paused when I spotted an eyeball in a teacup. No trace of how it got there. No body with an empty socket. Just the eyeball, swirling in a congealed bloody jelly at the bottom of the cup. I scurried away, snatching a cloth napkin to cover my nose. The interior darkened as I ascended the central staircase. No electricity, I noted as I clutched the railing. Why would the power be cut? A storm? But storms don't scoop out eyeballs with a dessert spoon. Coming onto deck 6, I peered down a long, dim corridor, lined with passenger cabins. To passengers coming and going, the hall was illuminated by electric lighting. But since I was seeing the ship 6 days in the future, the narrow hallway vanished into blackness. With no way to enter the cabins, and nothing much to see here, or in the other dimmed halls of the passenger decks, I ascended until I reached the pool. Pool deck, Deck 9 opened to wide panoramic windows, dining, a spa, and of course, the pool. I emerged outdoors with relief, removing the napkin from my nose as the sea breeze gave some respite from the odor. Around me, people partied in bikinis and beachwear and suits, sipping all manner of drinks around the sky-blue swimming pool. A young woman stretched on a blood-spattered lounger, oblivious to the gore beneath her tanned figure. A few bodies floated among the swimmers, bloated and discolored. My vision shimmered briefly as a teen boy swam right through one of the boaties, splashing as if it were not there. My heart lurched when I realized that it was his own, albeit dressed in different clothes. Oof. I grunted as a small figure beshade into me, her arm grazing mine. Sorry, cried a little girl in a pink swimsuit, bolting by as her mother yelled at her to watch out for people. I tried not to think of how cold the little girl's arm felt. Counted the bodies, 8 in the pool, 1 by the towel bin, head caved in. I made a circuit of the pool, occasionally brushing against people. Cold, cold, cold. No survivors, it seemed. But why? That was when I spotted a shirtless old man sitting at a table under an umbrella. I froze, goosebumps prickling along my skin. Unlike the floaters, there was no obvious reason for his death. His back was to me, the bare skin of his shoulders gray and blotchy. In his hand he held a broken drinking glass. He was positioned in repose. So what killed him? My heart quickened as I moved round to the front of him. His mouth hung open, shards of glass and a mangled tongue lolling out, crimson trailing down his shirt front. The source of the chewed glass was obvious. The cup in his hand was broken, its jagged edges bloody. He'd died choking on the glass. What the fuck is happening here? I whispered. Forward stairwell, the jogging track and the sun deck, decks 10 and 11, offered a stunning bird's eye of the pool and ocean, but I did not stop to take this in as I circled to the bow, opting to take the forward stairs down, rather than central. The stench hit me like a cloud. I had to stop as I descended into the dim stairwell, clinging to the railing, doubled over, gagging. It was so bad. My eyes watered, my stomach bucked, and it was dark. Thank God for my phone's flashlight. I fumbled it on and, napkin firmly over my nose, plunged down into the depths. The phone's thin illumination flashed along the carpeted stairwell and the hall of the first of the passenger decks. I kept descending, paused at an unidentifiable, slick red mound. I was examining it under my light when a crew member jogged up to me and asked, "Lose something, miss?" "Just my marbles," I muttered, shooing the crew member away and inadvertently brushing his hand. Cold, I turned my attention back to the mound, a slimy pile of intestines on the stairwell, trailing down to a disemboweled body. Intestines, eyeballs, eating broken glass. Nothing about this makes sense. I swiveled the beam to check further downward. That was when I found the source of the odor. My path down was obstructed by a mass of bodies. The ones underneath seemed to have been trampled, but the ones on top. I squeezed my watering eyes and retched against the wall. Some of the bodies bore horrible mutilations. Fingers bent and twisted, joints out of alignment, faces smashed in and jaws torn open. Many more appeared to have been crushed in the press of bodies. Best guess, there was a wave of panicked people rushing upstairs from below, colliding with a wave of others fleeing down from above. Why this staircase? What was near this part of the ship? The cabaret lounge, I realized. No electricity. No elevators. This was the nearest stairwell to the auditorium. Closer. I was inching closer to uncovering the fates of the passengers. And yet, I still had no idea what the passengers were fleeing from. Who were the attackers? Or... I thought of the eyeball. The glass chewed and swallowed. An icy pinprick at the base of my skull whispered the question I didn't want to ask. Why? Why did some of the passengers go mad and do it to themselves? Piano bar. I took the long way round to the cabaret theater, going all the way back up the stairs and coming down on the central staircase, only to detour on hearing the notes of a piano. I found myself in a cozy lounge and spotted a purple-haired figure at the keys. And just in time, the ship was due to depart in less than half an hour. "Lily," I rushed over, the musician's face lit. "Oh, it's you, friend. You made it? You've got to get off the ship. I know it seems crazy, but you've got to. Everyone on board is going to die. I've seen it because I'm psycho." I heard it a second later and smacked my forehead. I mean, psychic. Psychic. I can see the future. At her scrunched eyebrows, I burst, "Look, I know how I sound, but I've been able to see things since I was a little girl. And I am telling you that this ship is going to go dark. The engines will cut out. People are going to flee and trample each other on that forward staircase." Launching into a rapid-fire recounting, I was just getting to the eyeball in the teacup when she interrupted. "You're afraid of some sort of terrorist attack?" No. It's almost like a kind of madness, a contagion that spreads through the ship. A zombie apocalypse? Not zombies. Poltergeists. Possession. She played a riff from a horror movie. Should we call an exorcist? We should leave. I checked my phone. Quickly. What an odd duck you are. I can't imagine any sort of catastrophe as big as you're saying. You know this ship has tons of safety protocols. And even if I did believe some disaster were drawing near, do you really think I could abandon crowds and crew? She looked at me over her glasses, shimmering purple lips curving in a smile. "Listen, friend, if this were the Titanic, and I was the only one who could see the iceberg, I'd stay to steer us right, not run off leaving everyone to die." Icy fingers wrecked along my spine. Even if she wasn't taking me seriously, she was right. I did have a moral obligation to save people. An obligation I'd been trying to fulfill ever since I was a little girl, until the attempt killed my brother. And even after, I kept trying for years and years, until at last I realized that there is no way to change anything. That is why I call myself Cassandra, for the Greek prophet doomed to predict the future, but never be believed. Try and prevent what I've foreseen. You might as well try and pluck the stars from the sky. Every hand I'd touched was cold. Everyone on board would die. My fists balled, fingernails digging so hard into my palms. They bled. You really have no idea what you're asking of me. Oh, I'm not telling you to stay. I'm just explaining why I have to. Besides, I'm under contract. She winked and focused on her playing as guests entered and sat at nearby tables. She had no idea, none whatsoever. If I thought there was even a sliver of a hope, I wouldn't abandon people. Oh, if this happy-go-lucky musician understood the futility. But she will, came another, darker thought. She will know the full depth of the horror coming. No, I whispered. Huh? She shouted. Wait, friend, where are you going? But I was not listening. The cabaret theater, was the answer there? The reason for the crush of bodies in the forward stairwell. I rushed past the cafe with the eyeball in the teacup, through the grand doors into the cabaret hall. But the cabaret hall was surprisingly quiet, save for a light touch of classical music. A few passengers mingled here or there, unnoticing of the cadavers draped on chairs and tables. The stage itself was pristine, the wood smooth and polished in the fading orange light through the windows. Apparently, the origin of the panicked flight up the forward stairwell was not this grand entertainment venue. Nothing here supported that theory. Nonetheless, I gave the place a thorough search until my phone's battery ran low, and then I returned to the grand staircase. In one direction lay passenger cabins, in the other, the gangplank back to the port terminal and safety. It's not too late to be a coward, Cass, I said. Run from the ship. Run from the empty piano bench at the bar. Find a different, cheaper hole in the wall to crawl into like the cockroach you are. Always the survivor, eh? Or I could try just one more time. Hope, my brother always said, is the thing with feathers. And look what happened to him, flashed through my mind. My heart slammed against my ribcage. I'd just die too, unless I left in the next. How many minutes? I checked my phone, but it was dead. Like I would be if I stayed. A horn sounded the Sea Star's departure. A distant cheer rose up from the upper decks and balconies. I felt a brief, panicky impulse to run back out on deck and throw myself off the ship. But in truth, my fate had already been decided before the ship's horn blew. I hadn't been paying attention earlier, but I'd been rubbing my hands, and finally realized they were cold. Probably had been since I'd boarded. I shuffled leaden feet toward the passenger cabins, guided by my phone's light to the brass number plate for 4044, my cabin. Reached for the knob and stopped. That smell, dread squeezed my intestines like a wet rag. Smoke, burnt meat. I wrinkled my nose and opened the door. Orange rays shone through the window, the sunset so vivid it almost gave the illusion that the room was on fire. The walls and ceiling were charred, the edges of the mattress and sheets a smoldered ruin. But the worst damage was the small sofa by the coffee table, broken bottles scattered round. And there on the sofa, my fingers went limp on the door handle as I stared into melted sockets of a body charred beyond recognition. A dark line encircled its wrist, the blackened remnants of a charm bracelet. My bracelet. While the man on the pool deck swallowed glass, I would succumb to the insanity here, dousing myself in alcohol and flame, immolating myself. I hope you enjoying this story. Please like and share this story, and subscribe this channel and press bell icon for next part of this story.